Don't hold yourself hostage to the past. Don't hold yourself hostage to a single event. Those things don't define you. What you do from here forward defines you.
Welcome to another episode of The Force for Good. Today is an exciting day because my guest is somebody that I've known well over 20 years. We've worked together in many different contexts, and I have high esteem and incredible respect for this lady. Her commitment to kids, her passion for her work is remarkable. And what I'd like to do is introduce Tracy Litman, who, Tracy, all the years together, all the laughs, all the challenges that we've had together. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about, in your words, your career, the work that you've done, the work that you're continuing to do, and then we'll move from there.
Sure. I'm a public school social worker, and it's certainly the joy of my life. For me, it is about finding people who are courageous enough to say, here's where I'm at in life, and sometimes not, and learning with them along the way. So for me, I started that journey back when I was working in group homes and at RSI, Residential Services in Duluth. And when you meet people who have different abilities, who don't have the same freedoms you do, whether it's with their minds or their bodies, it really gives you pause to say, how grateful am I? Despite where you may come from, despite your own circumstance, when you have the ability to walk, talk, and breathe on your own, you're one of the luckiest humans alive. So that really started my journey into social work.
Sure.
I will say, and I'll talk about this more later, social workers found me, and then I found social work. And so part of my journey was working in group homes, and it was wonderful. And after I had been there for a while, I thought, I want to continue to work with families, and was lucky enough to be hired by Duluth Public Schools in 1990. So if you do the math, that's my 31st year starting this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Most of it has been working with adolescents, but I started at Nettleton Magnet School, which was an epic place to start because you can have all the book learning in the world.
Exactly.
But when you see the raw needs of people, you realize how much you don't know.
Right.
And they teach you how much you don't know really quick. Really quickly. So starting my career at Nettleton was probably the best place and the best lessons. I worked with people like Pete Bergman and Judy Haugen and Kathy Samala, and they took me in, and Jim Pierre as an epic social worker, and took this very green person with a lot of desire and taught me how to work with all sorts of diverse people. And so working at Nettleton and then at a multitude of different schools for the district, but for the longest time with adolescents at Woodland and then Ordini's Middle School, all we've done is take families where they're at, listen, learn what they need, and then share back our experience. Because life's an integrated experience, and if you pretend you know all the answers, they will quickly show you don't.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And so the majority of those years really have been with middle school.
Yes, with adolescents.
And
yes.
And there's a whole lot of people who would say,
you're crazy.
How the heck have you done that for so long?
Yeah. Well, I always say to people, I've never met an adult who wants to be 13 again. Right?
It's so true.
You know, teens are a lot like toddlers, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way at all. They're very egocentric. And so you really have to want to be there. And you also have to champion on parents because it's the toughest time in life there is.
Yes.
And adolescents can really shake your sense of self. And that's what parents will say. They're like, wow, sweet Susie was here one day. And then who is this person telling me I know nothing?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And in that, in a nutshell, is working with adolescents.
Yes.
They're epic. And then their emotions are all over the place.
Exactly. Exactly. So I'm going to read just a few things, and I'd like to get your reaction.
Sure.
Tracy's been honored with numerous other awards in her career, recognized as Outstanding Organizational Advisor nominee from UMD, UMD Bulldog Award in Leadership and Service to the University and Students, PAVSA Certificate of Appreciation and Commitment, Energy, and Devotion to the Vice Chair, Outstanding MSW Field Supervisor Award from UMD Social Work Department, Manley and Lillian Goldfine Gold Star Teacher Award, Ordine Middle School, and then Minnesota School Social Worker of the Year, 2021.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Tell me your reaction. What does that, how does that resonate with you?
Well, one, you're humbled and overwhelmed, and so many times people, when you listen to people on TV, they'll downplay it. It's ding dang awesome. I'm sorry, it's wonderful.
Nice.
But it's wonderful because you're in shock. It's wonderful because when I got the call to be Minnesota School Social Worker of the Year, I love myself some mascara, and by the time they told me, it was down to my knees.
Yeah.
I was over the moon because in that moment, you don't really think about the award. What you think about is where you came from. And when I started this, I said social workers found me, and then I found social work.
Yes.
I had social workers at my house when I was a very young child. And I thought, if I can go from where I came from, a place of poverty, domestic violence, and alcoholism, and become greater than that experience, that's what came rushing back to me.
Mm.
That I couldn't believe that this little girl grew up to do something life-changing. So it is the whole gamut of emotions
Sure.
that you feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Passion. You're so authentic. You're just, you are who you are, and that's who you present. And I think all of that is exactly what you bring to all of those years of work that you do. And it's just, it's remarkable to witness.
Well, I appreciate that. My husband, Joe, who's awesome, says to me, you always say the things that people only think, but you say it in a way that is respectful and that allows people to listen to it.
Sure.
I'll just tell you a quick experience. I have lots of parents I work with, and it's humbling to be a parent, and I'm grateful to work with them. And sometimes you have to say to people, you got to love your kid more than you hate each other. And to be able to say that and not have them walk out of the room
Yes.
or yell back is a privilege. But you say that you take the risk in the moment because the kid's life's at stake, and because we love big and we hurt big. And sometimes when parents no longer love, they don't mean to, but they end up hurting. And someone has to be able to say, you got to love your kids more than you hate each other. Exactly. And you don't get to rationalize behavior at the expense of your kids.
Right.
And honor them.
Yes. And in those moments, I think that we probably think very much alike in this regard. Is it's no longer about you, or it's no longer about me. It's about just getting out of your own way.
Yes.
And having the courage.
Yep.
And the presence to say with compassion.
Yep.
You just need to understand here. It's all going to be okay. We can work through this.
Right. And also allow people not to feel the embarrassment and shame, although those emotions at some point, embarrassment can be okay. We don't want people to feel shame, but allow people to reinvent themselves into the best person possible.
Right.
And for me, social work is about helping people, not only taking them where they're at, getting life's an integrated experience, but allowing people to reinvent themselves into the best person possible. And that's true for all of us every day, but especially for young people who make mistakes, or parents to not beat themselves up and just keep reinventing themselves into the best person possible.
Yeah, there's no instruction booklet, right?
No, no.
For any of us, and it's moment to moment, and it changes moment to moment.
100%.
Well, I think a big part of your commitment and your work has also been with PAVSA.
Yes.
Would you want to talk just a bit about that?
I was lucky enough to be on the board of PAVSA, and partly the desire to do that because when I was at Nettleton and other schools, you're working with people who've been victims of sexual assault, certainly children, but also adults.
Yeah.
And when you see that raw kind of harm, and that raw emotion that people go through and that fear and that shame, you need to learn as much as you can to be able to help the people in front of you. And there's also no better way than to put yourself in a spot around experts. And PAVSA, the program aid for victims of sexual assault, they are the experts in the area, and they've been so for a very long time.
Agree.
So I was lucky enough to be on the board of PAVSA. I was their art auction chair for a while in fundraising, but mostly I was there to learn from them and to be able to say to the community and all my wonderful friends, come to the PAVSA art auction, come know that these people are on 24/7.
Agree.
And they're amazing. And the SANE nurses and the police officers who've been trained, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I am forever grateful to have been a small part of their world.
And you were also part of or involved with DAIP.
Yes.
If you want to talk a little bit about that?
That was really important to me, the Domestic Abuse Intervention Project, because kids had no place to go to have an exchange if there was domestic violence in their house. And also, every time domestic violence occurred historically, prior to Ellen Pence's amazing Duluth model, police would come and, based on how they were trained, just remove the perpetrator from the house.
Right.
But often they'd return, and nothing else happened. There was no education. There was no safety net. It would just keep reoccurring.
Sure.
And that's so frightening. It shakes the person's sense of self. It puts the woman in a spot of, I have to stay here to protect my kids. I oftentimes have no means to go anywhere. I think it's so easy at first glance to say, why doesn't the woman just leave?
Right.
And most of the time it's the woman being abused. But when you have no money and no place to go, it's very, very frightening. And so to me, so many of the kids that I worked with were in that spot that I knew along my journey that I really wanted to be on the board. I was lucky enough to be on it also with Mike Baer, who was a former police officer, and really also helped move the narrative that we have to have a community response. One organization cannot do it all. And as epic as DAIP is, they cannot do it all. And so Ellen Pence really saw that. I think that she was a trailblazer in getting the community to say, this is a community problem. We need to keep our kids safe. We need to keep all adults safe.
Agree. And so DAIP started in Duluth and actually then became a national model?
Correct. It became a model across the world, across the country, that said, we can't do it alone. We need to have police involved. We need to have other organizations involved so that when someone calls 911 out of a domestic abuse, when the police officers arrive, they have tools to understand what is domestic violence about.
Yes.
And they didn't have that. And you only know what you know, and they had a different mission.
Mm-hmm.
And when the missions of keeping kids and people safe come together, good things happen.
Absolutely.
And that probably didn't do it justice, but it is certainly one of the most important agencies in our city.
I know that's a big part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
If we could just switch just a bit.
Sure.
We talk about Donald.
Sure.
Can we talk about your son?
Yeah.
And that beautiful smile says a ton.
Yeah. Donald, I call my chosen son because when I was 19 years old, I met Donald in a group home and quickly fell in love with him. And Donald rocked a different ability. Oftentimes, especially back then, the world didn't understand people of different abilities. But I fell in love with this little boy who changed my life. And how I became his legal guardian was I called home one day to his parents' house, and his mom asked me not to call back, basically, and then gave up rights to him. And when I was 19, that just took my breath away. I thought, how could they do that? Of course, life taught me lots of lessons, which is the world wasn't very kind to folks who had children with disabilities back then.
Exactly.
So I took my little sister Stacy. I went to the courthouse. I stood in front of the judge in Carleton County. He looked at me and he said, "You look like you're 12 years old." Well, I was 19 at the time. Probably looked 12. I was 19 at the time.
Right.
And I said, "I would like to take over all legal rights of Donald." And the judge said, why would I do that? You're so young. What do you know? And I said, "I don't know a lot, but I'm willing to learn. And I don't see anybody else standing behind me." And in that moment,
Wow.
my life changed.
Wow.
And Donald taught my family, my sons who came after, Jack and Reed, what it's like to be able to walk and talk on your own, what it's like to be able to throw a football, what it's like to be able to run down the street independently, because Donald was born blind, a quadriplegic, and nonverbal.
Right.
And he would never have those gifts. And yet, I would say he was a warrior because he stared down all the looks, all the stares, and had no way of fighting back, but he had a way of existing. He was there. There was nothing he could do about what people said or did, but I was there for him. And I was the lucky one because he taught me what it is to be an advocate. And if I could say that I'm decent at anything, it's being protective.
Yes.
And being an advocate.
Yeah. Yes. You, I'm going to read just a paragraph because I find it incredibly reflective of who Donald was and how Donald lives still with you and through you.
Yep.
You came into this world with one mother who loved you. But all those years ago, the world didn't support her and how to love you. Yet, you found another in me, and for the last 34 years, you, Donald, have made me a better human than I would ever have been. Together, with you leading the way, we taught others there was a place for you in a world less than kind to you and to other people of different abilities. You were and are my kind of people. You, Donald, are my kind of beautiful.
Yeah.
That is remarkable.
Yeah.
And such a reflection of the passion, your drive, your desire. It just epitomizes so much of who you are and who you continue to be. And that's part of the privilege of knowing you and being able to interact with you. And then in all this context, at a PAVSA event, I thought, I wonder if Tracy Litman would even consider being a part of the Miller-Dwan Foundation board of directors. So I might have been a little nervous before I asked.
Yeah.
And then approached you, and you said, "I still have a fire in my belly."
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
Well, I think that for me, what's really important as I come to an end in my career, I have a couple years left to work, is that I want to go out on a high note. I want to go out the same way I came in. I don't want to coast. I want to leave my impact on the world, because when I think about Donald, if Donald was here, what would he be doing? And with all the things that happen in the world, we often forget what do we have right in front of us. And I don't ever want to forget what I have right in front of me, which is given an opportunity. I will say I wouldn't be here if I didn't have the love of my 93-and-a-half-year-old, very Italian, epic mother, who a long time ago said to me, despite us not choosing this lifestyle, despite having a father who was violent and died a chronic alcoholic, she said, "I'm going to give you compassion, but you don't get a buy."
Nice.
You go out and you change the world in the way that you think it should be. And if you're not living that life now, then you go create it for yourself. And along the way, you better create it for others.
Nice.
Yeah. And so my mom had amazing, wonderful sayings, lots of them, but I sit here with the ability I have, if I can be proud of anything, with the fact that she was born in a time where women didn't have the same freedoms 93 and a half years ago. You couldn't leave. Divorce wasn't a thing.
Agree.
And on her behalf, I'm going to try to help others live their best lives.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
she's epic. MG, I love you.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And so you said yes.
I said yes.
Why?
Well, because I figure, why not? I have been on lots of different boards, and I've been grateful for every one of them. And if I'm going to be ending my tenure in a few years with Duluth Public Schools, why not do one more thing that I'm passionate about, which is children's mental health?
Agree.
And the fight to gain more access for children's mental health, to ease the access for children's mental health, and to give kids a vision beyond today. Because oftentimes young people, by virtue of their developmental levels and what they're going through with adolescence, are either very impulsive, they can get lost in the temporary. And I want to help move that needle to how do we provide more access to young people and their families who need support.
Yeah.
And what better place than Miller-Dwan, because of my amazing experience, with Amber Wing, who we refer so many of our adolescents to.
Yeah.
And out of gratefulness for Becky Helverson Mellon up at Amber Wing and all the amazing folks, I thought, I'm going to do this.
Nice.
I'm going to do this. And of course, out of my deep respect for you, I wanted to do it. And,
thank you.
At first, some people like, are you crazy? You're gonna do another board?
One
and
more
I'm like,
thing,
yeah,
one more thing.
Yeah, I am. Because why not? I'm here.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. Why not? It's really become sort of a mantra at the Miller-Dwan Foundation when we've thought about PM Plus and do we reach out to the World Health Organization? Do we talk to the people in New York? Do we talk to the people at George Washington University?
Yes.
And it turned into, why not?
Yeah.
And so also then taking the lead in an intervention that's created by the World Health Organization and bringing it to Duluth, which you have some experience in doing, where you talk about a model that was born in Duluth and then is literally worldwide. It's also just this whole other skill set.
Partly, you can't be afraid to fail.
Yes.
And my mom always used to say to us too, if not you, then who? And so the Miller-Dwan Foundation is not afraid to continually evaluate how do we bring programming like PM Plus, problem management plus to Duluth.
Right.
And to have that courage not to fail is I think what great organizations have. And with you and Tracy Marciniak leading the way, I feel very lucky to be a small part and a brand new board member
exactly.
of following the work that's so many people have done.
And it's I don't know that I could ever say that you have, in all the years that I've known you, been a follower. You walk alongside and you lead. And those two qualities, when I think about all the work you've done and all the work you're going to continue to do, because you're truly not done yet.
Nope.
No. And the courage. And that courage that you talk about and that you exude, how do you keep mustering that up?
I go back to feeling really grateful and a lot in awe of the fact that as a professional today and a mom and my best role grandma and partner to Joe, I'm still in awe of how amazing my life is. And by that, I mean that I am still very grateful that I have a house that's peaceful, I have children I love, and that people let me into their life to help them. And that They allow a relationship to be built in the school system where they entrust you with their most important person, their child, right?
Right.
And it's not to say that there's differences. People come into it. Public schools are a microcosm for the whole world. We take all who enter at different levels of functioning. Every day, we deal with death, dying, divorce. Somebody's in jail. Someone's dying of breast or ovarian cancer. And we manage all those emotions. And I will say I am so proud to work alongside some epic public school social workers and amazing school counselors, because we handle all that emotion, and that drives me. That drives me because I never take for granted the life I have.
Yes.
I've worked really, really hard for it, and so have many, many other people. For me, it's never losing sight of where I came from. I look back long enough to take the lessons with me. And I say to myself what I often say to the teens I work with, which is don't hold yourself hostage to the past. Don't hold yourself hostage to a single event. Those things don't define you. What you do from here forward defines you. And I often say to people at work, from here forward, where are we going to go? To families, from here forward, despite the disagreeing or the agreeing, where are we going to go from here forward? So that's what drives me, is I'm alive, and what am I going to do with it while I'm on this earth?
And to help kids, families understand that without all of those things that have happened, they wouldn't be who they are.
Correct.
Right? That's part of the fabric. That's part of the thread. That's part of what you take, you learn, and you grow.
Right.
And I love you don't have to be a hostage to your past.
Yeah.
Right?
And I want that for adults, and I want that for kids, because especially with social media, which can be a wonderful thing, it can also be the detriment, because historically, young people could make mistakes and we could recover. You could recover in private, you could recover within your family, whatever that looked like. But today, it's so much harder because people post every mistake. And yet, people who work with youth still have to do the work. We still have to teach them the tools of reinventing themselves, taking responsibility, or if they were the target of it, how do we cope with that?
Yes.
You know, trauma brings on stuff we don't ask for, but if you've got a healthy adult in your life, we teach you healing is a choice you can make to move through that trauma.
Yeah. I can't thank you enough for being that important somebody for so many people for so many years, and now being that important somebody who's now a part of our journey at the Miller-Dwan Foundation. My respect for you and my mutual passion for the work that we've done over all these years. And I can't thank you enough for being with us today. Thank you for sharing so much about not only who you are professionally, who you are personally, and courage, and why not. So that's it for this episode of The Force for Good. Please check us out on social media, all of our channels. We're readily available. And don't forget, please join us in being part of The Force for Good.